Hello and welcome. My name's Leanne. I live in Australia and this is my crafty cupboard. Good morning, and the prompt this time for Down the Garden Path in Roxy's Journal of Stitchery is birdhouse. That's my birdhouse, and I've been shopping in the crafty cupboard. These delightful little flowers I found in an op shop, a second-hand store. And I'm thinking of doing some other ribbon flowers with these lovely little gold beads in the centre. And I've got some wools there to couch down to make a tree branch. So I started out by sketching what I want to stitch in water-soluble pen. There's my little drawing of a birdhouse. I've taken some liberties here and I'm not going to stitch it against a brick wall. But I want to use a hoop today, and this tip came from one of my viewers. So when your piece of fabric is too small to put in a hoop, stitch it to a piece of tulle or other thin fabric, and then it's big enough to put in a hoop. Wonderful tip. Thanks so much for sharing that. It's just a little running stitch I'm using to put the fabrics together. Okay, let's hoop it up. I'm just tightening it a little bit as much as I can by hand, and then with a ruler because I can't find my screwdriver. Right, to start off with, I've made the little birdhouse out of felt, and I'm just using a tiny little running stitch to stitch it down. This is just using ordinary sewing machine thread, and I've got it held down there with my little clover applique pin. They're something I owned for a long time, had forgotten about them, and when I recently tried them, they were fabulous. You don't get your sewing thread caught around them. They just hold down and sort of sit very flat. So down goes the little felt piece for my birdhouse. And now I'm stitching on the little roof, again in felt, and this is blanket stitch. I do find it much easier to blanket stitch out of a hoop so that you can sort of bend the fabric, but I can't be bothered taking it out of the hoop for this tiny amount of stitching, so I'm just persevering. That's the part that's difficult when it's in a hoop, to sort of put it down and bring it up through the fabric. So as I was saying, I took some artistic liberty here and put my birdhouse in a beautiful little flower garden. There will be flowers soon. Here they are. I couldn't help myself. I was going to wait till later, but I just sort of tacked them down with a little running stitch, each little cluster. And I could see then I didn't need to do the whole fence that I'd drawn because you can't see it. So I'm just using, this is sort of a piece of raffia ribbon or something that was on a bunch of flowers. And I've cut it in half to make it thinner. And now I'm just doing a little back stitch over the sort of 4 lines essentially of material there. So just a couple of rows of back stitch to hold the fence post down. So now I'm going onto the flowers and sewing them down properly. So I'm just taking one little stitch at sort of each intersection, if you like, sort of, where the petals join to the stem, one across the stem, then I'll do one to hold down the leaf. And I'm still just using that same sewing machine cotton. And if it's a tiny stitch and you pull it firmly, it disappears. You can't actually see it, it just disappears in amongst the stitching. I'm just careful to try and do the stitch the same way that the stitch runs on the embroidered piece. Okay, so now it's time to do our little feathered friend. First I'm just going over him again with my water-based a water-soluble pen because I couldn't see the lines very well. This looks big on screen, but as you can see, he's smaller than my thumbnail, so it's tiny. I'm just doing satin stitch. When I do satin stitch, I like to sort of do one stitch in the center part that's the longest first, and then work my way out either side. So you can see I, sort of working my way down to his tummy, and then later I'll work up that rest of that piece up to his head and wing. Just doing a slightly darker blue on the wing. And again with this one I started with that long wing tip first and worked my way up, and now I'm working my way back down towards the tummy. Just in satin stitch. Sorry for the blurring. Corinne mentioned actually, I think, that the iPhone is blurring a lot lately, and this happened to me all throughout this filming. So I actually filmed about 2 hours of footage, and so much of it's unusable because it just kept going out of focus, and it never used to do that. Very frustrating. Little head in white, I'm just giving him some legs in straight stitch and some little claws to hang on to the post with. I'd already stitched a little beak there. That was just 2 straight stitches to do the little beak. And this colour is just the same colour that I blanket stitched the birdhouse in, because it was still in my needle, so it was easy to grab and use. Why not? I've decided what colour I was going to do. And a little French knot for an eye. Oh, that's a bit of a big eye. I'm not sure how I feel about that. I've just added a little darker blue to add some detail to the wing and the top of his head. Now it's time for the tree branches. So I want to do a blossom tree, so I'm just couching down the wool for the tree branches. This is just a piece of variegated, probably acrylic yarn. It's just a random little piece that I had, and I'm just using a fine embroidery wool to couch it down. You can see because of the variegation of the base wool, here it's quite light compared to my couching thread, but I'm not worried. By the time I've put blossoms down, you're not going to see. So this is just laying down the base wool and taking a little stitch over the top every now and again to hold it down. Alright, now onto the blossom flowers. I'm just using silk ribbon. I'm just doing ribbon stitch 5 petals. This is a variegated ribbon, so again the colours will sort of naturally change to give a bit of interest throughout the piece. You can see that where I started it was quite pale, and now it's getting to be a darker pink. I was so keen for this prompt. I just got straight into it. Some things just fall into place, and I had all the things. I had the base ready. It fitted in well with the base I'd prepared for the irises, and when it was birdhouse, that was easy because I've got one hanging out the front to have a look at. Not that one ever has birds in it. Anything I've ever seen living it is a big fat spider. But this version, look at the sweet little bird that's there outside the house. Very proud of his home and garden. Alright, so there goes the 5th petal now. And I'm going to add a gold bead to the centre just to give it a little lift. Now this is magic. This is a bead shoe. And I learnt this from Merrilyn Whittle when I did a workshop with her. So I bought the bead shoe from Merrilyn, and as you can see, it enables me to pick up the bead instead of rolling them all across the table and then flinging them across the room with my needle. Very, very helpful invention. So it's just sort of this furry fabric. And so very easy to pick up the beads. Normally when I bead, I spend more time flinging them around the room and then picking them up than I do to actually put any bead on the sewing project. So I was thrilled to learn about the secret of a bead shoe with Merrilyn. I do recommend it. Get in touch with Merrilyn Whittle in Canberra if you'd like to buy one. So I am doing 2 stitches through each bead just to anchor them down well. Again, there was a lot of blurring that happened in the filming of this, so I had to chop all the very out of focus parts out. Time to add a little bit of greenery, give it a bit of lift. I'm just doing tiny random ribbon stitches. This ribbon's thinner, so I think the flowers I did in 7mm, and this is a 4mm ribbon. I wonder what our last prompt will be. I'm so curious. I'm wondering if it'll fit, say, behind the irises that I've got on this piece, or if, because I've left a space for a cover page, if you like, at the front of the wildflowers. So maybe, I mean, I've got room there to do the last prompt if it doesn't sort of fit with this piece I'm working on now. I have found with ribbon embroidery, it is worth your time just to sort of make sure the ribbons are laying how you want them to. We don't have to think about that with thread so much, you know, because they're thin. We just go in and out. But with the ribbon, it's worth your while to use the needle under the ribbon to flatten it out or straighten it, or to make it lay the way you'd like. And you can see I take time with where I'm putting the point of the needle down to hold it in the right position. There. That's done. I love stitching this piece. I stayed up so late for me, I can't tell you. I'm an early to bed, early to rise person, and I was actually up till about 11:30 finishing this off, which is insanely late for me. So yeah, I'm wondering, do I put this as my cover page here next to the wildflowers? I'm not sure. I sort of feel like it clashes a little bit. You can see all of my scrollers actually turned out to be sort of separate little pictures, little pages anyway. It is a bit like that, the scene in Mary Poppins where Bert paints all those lovely holiday pictures on the pavement, and you can choose which one to hop into. I when I tested the irises against this before, I quite liked the look of that. So this is where it'll probably end up. But I'm not going to stitch it down till we see what the next prompt is. So there it is, my birdhouse, but in a new setting with a lovely little bird. A garden full of flowers. There's no such thing as too many flowers. Well, thanks very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.